Yeah, so Granary was originally written 6 years ago, 6 or 7 years ago. I was killing time in Boston during a Straight No Chaser show that we had in town, and my friend Don and I were just gonna hop on the Freedom Trail, walk around town before sound check, and we found ourselves in Granary Burying Ground. And there was a tour guide with a bunch of school children around him. And he was saying, okay, kids, let's go now see where Mother Goose is buried. And that unlocked this part of my brain that I had forgotten was even there. And I transported back in time basically to when I lived in Rhode Island as a kid in grade school. And we would come up for field trips and stuff in Boston. And I had this moment, it was a very surreal moment where I'm thinking, I've been one of those school kids in this very place. And I started to remember things that I hadn't thought of in a long, long time. And around that same time, we passed by the monument and the gravestone to Paul Revere. And the neat thing about the tombstone in particular is it's just this tiny little slab of rock. It's so simple and humble. And it just says Revere's tomb on it. And you could almost walk right by it. It's so unassuming. And Don and I started talking about the humility in that gravestone. That this guy was a patriot, he was a family man, he was ardent in his beliefs about the new country, this new vision of democracy and revolution. Yet all we know about him is one night of his life. And even that, I learned, was blown way out of proportion by this poem about his midnight ride, maybe almost 100 years later after the fact. And so I wanted to write a song that was from Paul's perspective about what would he say from beyond the grave to one of us today. Just about life, not about politics, not about anything like that, but what would he encourage us to consider as Americans? And the one thing that it's kind of weird, like this song has been sort of steeping in my brain, and I've been figuring out myself what it's even about, which is odd. But I think it's a song about doing what you can do for the betterment of others with what you have in the moment. And I think it's also a reminder that one day, one mistake, or one victory in your life doesn't define all of you. There's a line in the song that says, but I was more a man than my tombstone reads, it's just history, it's not all of me. And I think that's true, that sometimes we can think that certain chapters of our lives or one event in our life defines the rest of it for us. And that's just not true.